Hey guys, this is Joe748, and I'm back again with SD1. SD1, how you doing?
Joe, I don't know why you always ask me on podcasts. You know I'm living the dream.
I'll just start. I'll answer for you. And today we have a really special guest, or two guests for you guys, and we're going to delve into a little bit of AP outside of the casino world today and focus on how to advantage play the credit card rewards and point systems, the mileage, all that. Greg and Nick run the frequentmileair.com website, and they've helped thousands of people travel the world in luxury for pennies on the dollar and squeeze out every last drop of value out of their everyday spending. I know there's a lot to cover here, but if someone's just starting out in the credit card game, how do they even get started?
So I think it'd be better to give an overview of this game, the points and miles game, before jumping into how to get started with it. So at a very, very high level, the game goes like this. Credit card companies want your business, and so they're willing to throw many thousands of points at you for signing up for a card and meeting some minimum spend requirements. These days, getting 100,000 points, even 150,000 points or more from a single credit card welcome bonus is not unusual. At a very high level, the idea is basically you look for the best offers that are available like that. You sign up for them when you can, you get the points, and then you learn the best ways to use them, because the card companies want you to use them for the least possible value, but there are ways to use them for incredible value. And so that's at a high level what the game's all about.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of overlap between the casino advantage play community and the points and miles community because of that. Because like we all love getting a win, right? We all love kind of sniping out that win and finding the advantage. And so that's where I think there's a huge amount of overlap between the two communities, because we focus on ways to earn tons and tons of points without flying. I mean, our tagline for years has been earn miles without flying. And then we write about ways to use them for far outsized value. And so if you're looking to get started, I think really the big thing is the getting started part. I think a lot of people have skepticism, and I think anybody who's a casino advantage player probably can relate to that. You know, if you've ever had a conversation with someone about what you're doing, they're like, no, I don't think that works. I don't think that's true. And you say, yeah, well, if you put your mind to it and you start doing the math and you spend some time doing it once, and then you practice more and more, you're going to get better at it. And it's the same kind of thing with award travel. I think once you kind of snag that first good redemption where you're like, oh, wow, this works. I just booked a flight and I paid like $5.60 in taxes for it. And it would have been $400 or $500 or $600 or whatever the case might be. Then, you know, it feels pretty good and you feel like you've gotten a pretty big win. So I think when people are getting started, often recommend that they start with a card where they're going to be able to get very good value out of the welcome bonus itself. And we focus on lots of creative ways to meet the spending requirements too. So if you look at the spending requirement on a card and you say, oh, I don't usually spend that much in this amount of time. Well, there's lots of ways, just like everything else in life, to get around the barriers if you're kind of committed to what you're doing. So really, it makes a lot of sense to start out with a great offer. Find a card that's got a really strong welcome offer on it and meet the spending requirements, and then learn how to use those specific points to make a specific trip happen. And once you get one under your belt, it's far easier to start expanding and saying, okay, well, what if I got 2 or 3 cards? Or what if I got a couple of cards that fit my spending patterns well? Because then you can kind of dive further and further into it. Like anything else, I know with advantage play with blackjack, for instance, there's a lot of different ways, right? A lot of different methods to count cards, and it gets more and more complex depending on how much complexity you want in your life or how much simplicity. And so with a beginner, someone who's new to it, we usually say, you know, start with something pretty simple. So Capital One miles, for instance, very simple to understand and use. You can use them to erase travel at 1 cent per mile, or you can learn how to transfer them to the transfer partners and get good value. Maybe an even easier option for a lot of people is something like a Chase Sapphire Preferred card, because their transfer partners are more familiar to people: United, Southwest, JetBlue, Hyatt. So those are programs that you probably already know, you might have already used before. And often you can get an excellent introductory bonus on that card and learn how to use those points well to transfer them to the transfer partners, or even just use them to book travel through Chase at 1.25 cents per point. With that card, you can do pretty well right from the get-go. So you start with one, like, a Chase Sapphire Preferred or maybe a Capital One Venture card, And I think once you get that first redemption down and then you start reading a little bit more, it gets a lot easier pretty quickly.
Yeah. And let me jump in. I want to give a specific example of, let's take the Sapphire Preferred card. Suppose you get 100,000 points with that card. You can cash that out for $1,000 and call it a win, but you wouldn't be maximizing the value of those points. You could alternatively go through Chase's travel portal and book $1,250 worth of travel. So you've just, sort of gained $250 of value by doing it that way. Or suppose there's a great award flight. You want to book a flight to Australia or something, and maybe that flight costs $3,000. You might be able to transfer those points to an airline program where you can book that award flight and get $3,000 of value from the same 100,000 points. So the opportunities get really, really great. And the reason Nick mentioned cards like the Sapphire Preferred and Capital One as great starter cards is because you don't have to do that complicated thing of figuring out that award flight to Australia, how to get $3,000 of value. You can instead, call it an easy win to get the $1,250 of value, for example. And people just starting, should be delighted. But, one card sign up getting that much value is pretty good.
A question a lot of people might be having getting into it is, are there any downsides to doing this? Is it going to impact your credit score in any negative way before we delve right into it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So many people think that signing up for a lot of credit cards is going to hurt their credit score. And there are good reasons for that, because a component of your credit score is how long you've had your cards open. And so if you sign up for a number of new cards, your average length of credit is going to be lower. However, a much bigger portion of your credit score is your utilization ratio. So what that is the amount of the credit you use each month compared to how much you have available to you. If, for example, you have across your credit cards $100,000 worth of credit, like your credit line, and you spend $10,000, then you have a 10% utilization ratio. And that's good. But a lot of people have much less than 100,000, and so they're spending like 30% of their available credit each month, somewhere in that range or more. That's bad for your credit score. So what happens is when you start signing up for more and more cards, the denominator gets bigger. The amount of credit you have available to you grows. And as long as you're not spending a lot more proportionately, your utilization ratio actually goes down. And so what happens to almost everybody who jumps into this hobby and gets into it big time is they do see a small, very temporary drop in their credit score as they sign up, mostly just because of the credit inquiries as they sign up for several cards. But then over the next, starting about 2 or 3 months later, you should see your credit score go up and probably higher than it ever was before.
What I often tell people is that when you're watching like a morning news program, they're trying to simplify things into a 10-second soundbite. And it's hard to simplify the answer to this into a 10-second soundbite. And so the easy answer is when you first apply for a new card, the issuer pulls your credit report, and that inquiry typically drops your credit score by 5 to 10 points. It's a temporary dip. After about 6 months, you start recovering it, or just about recovered it, I think, after about 6 months. So it's a temporary dip, but there is truth to the fact that there is a small dip in the beginning. It's usually, again, not very significant for most people, and you recover it relatively fast. But it's true that it does dip a little bit initially. And like Greg said, a component of your credit score is the average age of account. So if you have a bunch of brand new accounts, that will lower your score some. But as those accounts age, your score is going to go back up. And so it's very easy to condensify that and say, oh, well, if you apply for a new card, your score is going to go down. Yes, it may some temporarily, but in the long run, the effect of what Greg just talked about, the effect of the average, or rather the utilization ratio, and then over time, as you get into playing the game and you have some really old cards, and so it keeps your average age of account long, is likely to increase your score rather than decrease it over time. And people often will also ask, well, what about canceling a card? I've heard that hurts my credit. Now, that is the oversimplification of the utilization thing. If you only have 2 cards, and let's say they each have a $10,000 limit, you've got $20,000 worth of total credit limit, and you've got a $2,000 balance on one of them, you've got a 10% utilization ratio. But if you cancel one of those cards, all of a sudden your utilization ratio becomes 20% because your total available credit is only $10,000 and you have a $2,000 balance. So it doubles your utilization if you only have 2 credit cards. So again, the morning show oversimplification is if you cancel a card, it can hurt your credit because it'll increase your utilization. But the more complex, nuanced you're getting into this hobby, and you're going to have a bunch of cards and have $100,000, $200,000 worth of available credit, you cancel one of those and it's going to be a blip on the radar. It's not going to make any difference in your utilization percentage because it's going to be such a small difference in that. So the short answer is that no, it doesn't hurt your credit overall. There are things you can do that would hurt your credit if you don't pay the bill on time, if your utilization ratio becomes really high. But certainly if you manage it right, it can be good for your credit in the long run.
When I was looking into it, I noticed that a lot of the rewards redemption, a lot of the airlines were unfamiliar to me. A lot of international airlines I'm personally not going to be using as much. Is it safe to say that there's more value in those international airlines versus the domestic ones?
Well, there certainly can be. This kind of plays out several levels beyond where you're probably starting if you're a beginner. But to give one sort of concrete-ish example, learning how to use those foreign transfer partners is where you can find a lot of those advantage plays, where you can potentially snag a really terrific deal. Where, for instance, a simple example, a United flight from New York or Boston to Hawaii would probably cost you at least 25,000 points in economy class. If you book that same United flight, though, through one of their partners, for instance, your Chase points, you could transfer those to Singapore Airlines. And I think that same flight's 19,000 points through Singapore Airlines. Same United flight. You don't have to fly Singapore Airlines. You'd be flying United, but you can use partner miles. And so when you learn how to transfer to partners like that, you can save miles. Now, that same flight you might be able to book through another program for even less. Well, we've written about, for instance, if you have those Capital One miles, you could transfer to Turkish Airlines, which you may never fly and may never have even thought about, but you may be able to book that same exact United flight for only 10,000 miles one way. And so there is a lot of value to be had in the foreign programs. Now, there's also some challenges with that specific example. Turkish can be a tough one to use, but it illustrates the point that the foreign programs that you might think, I'm never going to use that, can actually be incredibly useful sometimes, even for domestic flights within the United States.
I just yesterday booked, there was a flight, a Delta flight that would have cost me about $300. I could have used 25,000 Delta miles. Instead, I used 7,500 Virgin Atlantic miles. So right there, that's, huge value. What is that? About 4 cents per mile?
Right. And to be clear, that's flying Delta. He's using his Virgin Atlantic miles to fly domestically within the United States on Delta. So finding those types of things and understanding that is where there's a huge amount of potential upside on, the advantage play sort of perspective.
Yeah, that's the only thing I've really gotten into. So I've kind of not near what you guys have, but figured out how to work American Express in a way to maximize my travel. And I fly Delta a lot. Virgin is the one that seems to be opportunistic for my particular situation in terms of miles and transferring and like going to England especially, but also like domestically. So that's been pretty cool. Also, Delta has changed everything and they don't even care about you flying anymore. They just want the spend. So like achieving status on Delta, you don't have to fly on one of their planes and you can be a diamond.
Not just Delta anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's the one I'm familiar with. So that's how they're all kind of going?
Yeah, pretty much. At least all the domestic airlines are more and more valuing the spend with that airline over miles flown.
So that plays into your hand, really, and what you guys do.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like Delta, for example, 4 different credit cards that give you status boosts.
Yeah, 3 of them.
Okay, yeah. So there's like the Platinum Sky Miles Business, the Reserve, and the Reserve Business are the 4. And if you get all 4 of them, you get enough status boosts that you get gold status before you even like step on a plane. So that's their second tier of status right there. And then, as you said, if you spend on the Delta Reserve card, you can earn enough MQDs to earn even higher level status pretty easily.
Yeah, I flipped everything from using because I would always use an Amex Platinum card, and I completely flipped to using the Reserve just because of what they just did to their program. And it's been good for me. And for an intro guy that's not really like doing what you guys do, but I'm like, okay, there's value here.
So the value in that case is for if you value getting higher level elite status through spend, right? Where we'd caution people is when you're earning Delta Sky Miles as rewards for your spend, instead of transferable membership rewards points, that's not a good trade-off. We value membership rewards points a lot higher than Delta Sky Miles. And that's because with the membership rewards points, you can do things like we talked about before, like transfer them to Virgin Atlantic in order to book cheaper flights. With Delta Sky Miles, you can't do that. So it's fine. If you highly value Delta Elite status, your strategy makes a lot of sense. But for those who don't, I would caution away from doing that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's a very much a different strokes for different folks type of a situation. For instance, Greg has long had Delta Elite status. So he has those cards and he has put spend in the past on those cards in order to earn Elite status. Whereas I've never had Elite status with Delta. In fact, I've never even had a Delta credit card because it's not useful for me in my situation. And so there's a lot of variance from person to person in terms of what matters and where you're going to put your spend and why and how and what matters to you. And if Elite status matters to you, which it certainly may, depending on your situation, then it can make a lot of sense to spend on one of those Delta cards. But as a for instance, if you were spending on a Delta Reserve, you're earning 1 Delta mile per dollar spent. If you instead spent on an Amex Blue Business Plus, you'd be earning 2 membership rewards points per dollar spent on up to $50K per year anyway, that you could then transfer to Delta and end up with 2 Delta miles instead of 1 Delta mile. So at a base level, you can kind of look at every dollar you spend on that card at 1X as kind of costing you a Delta mile. So you're kind of giving up one in order to get whatever the status benefit is. And again, that trade can make sense. It depends on the situation.
I really value my free upgrades. I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
There are so many cards out there, and it seems like a lot of them fall under the same umbrella of the bank. So can you just go over what banks are offering these cards? It's kind of like the casino chains. We got Caesars, we have MGM. We have these major chains. What are the chains that we're working with here?
The biggest ones are Amex and Chase. They have the most cards with the most great sign-up bonuses. But you also have Citibank, Capital One, and then to a lesser extent, you have like Bank of America and Barclays.
Wells Fargo is...
US Bank a little bit.
Yeah, they're kind of lesser players. And then there's like First National Bank of Omaha that does the MGM card, for instance. I mean, there are some others out there, but the major players are the ones Greg mentioned.
Yeah, Amex, Chase, and Capital One are the really big ones that have a lot of opportunities.
Cool. So let's just take one of those, for example. If a new person's starting out and they're doing the welcome bonus thing, is it possible for them to max out welcome bonuses at Chase, for example, on every single one of those cards, or is there a limit there?
Chase is the first example here. I think it makes a lot of sense because Chase has a couple of rules. And so there's a number of different application rules. Every bank has their own application rules. And on our website, we list all of that information pretty comprehensively. So it's pretty easy to find what the different rules are. And so you can, in fact, earn welcome bonuses on many Chase cards, many cards from any bank for that matter. But Chase has some specific rules. Like, for instance, they will not approve you for a new card, generally speaking, if you have opened 5 or more new credit card accounts in the past 24 months. 5 or more show up on your personal credit report. That is, a lot of business cards don't show up in your personal credit report and won't count, but that's, again, another layer for another day or later in the discussion. So again, they have that base rule of no more than 5 in the last 24 months on the consumer side from any bank. Beyond that, it gets a little complicated too, because, for instance, Chase has the Chase Sapphire Preferred and the Chase Sapphire Reserve, and they have a 48-month rule where if you've earned the welcome bonus on one of those cards in the last 48 months, then you can't get the welcome bonus on the other of those 2 cards. And so there are some specific rules like that. Again, we list application rules. For instance, on our website, we have an entire page that's just dedicated to application rules by issuer. And then we additionally, on each of our individual card pages, will list key application rules for that particular bank. Other banks don't have rules nearly as stringent as that. And so we do often recommend that people start with Chase because even if you think you're only going to get 1 or 2 credit cards, if this starts to tickle your fancy and you start to get excited about it and want more, there will likely come a time 2 years from now when you'll say, oh man, I wish I had gotten that Chase card or this one. So we often recommend people start there because that's a good bank to get started with, since you may not qualify for them later on if you really get rapidly into this hobby.
Cool. Yeah, let's keep following with that example. So I'm a new person. I'm gonna, do my one or two chases. How do they decide which one of those to go with? Is it just looking at how you're able to spend the rewards per your lifestyle, or is it some other factor?
Well, so we like for everybody to focus first on transferable points. So Chase has a number of cards that earn what they call ultimate rewards points that can transfer to different airline and hotel programs. But importantly for beginners, the other thing you can do with ultimate rewards points, especially if you have a card like the Sapphire Preferred or Sapphire Reserve, is book travel through the Chase portal and get more value for your points that way. So it's an easy win. So to boil all that down, I'd say for most beginners, if you're starting with Chase, start with the Sapphire Preferred card.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. Now, to kind of follow a little bit further, though, I would say that the next thing to consider is which offers are the most valuable. And so you have to kind of look and compare, well, which offers are good? Not all offers are created equally. And so, Greg just mentioned maybe you can find a 100,000 point welcome offer on the Sapphire Preferred. And you might look at a United card and say, oh, well, that one's got 125,000 points. That's even better, right? And maybe for your situation, although I wouldn't value that at more than 100,000 transferable points. And so you got to find a way to compare. And so our credit card best offers page lists the cards within each bank by first year value. It's divided between transferable currency cards and airline cards and hotel cards. And we have a formula for how we break down the first year value by considering how much opportunity cost you're giving up by putting spend on a particular card, how much the welcome bonus is worth based on our reasonable redemption values, the values of any concrete perks in the first year, et cetera. And so that can be a comparison tool to compare. And you have to be aware also that you won't always see the same offers everywhere you look. If you look at any particular credit card, if you Google a credit card and just go wherever you land, you may or may not be getting the best offer. The same exact credit card might have 3 or 4 different offers, but because they're trying to see what will entice different people in different places. And so knowing that you're getting the best available offer is important because it could really vary. In some cards, you could be looking at, if you go to site A, maybe 80,000 points for a welcome bonus. And then you go to site B, it might be 100, and site C, it might be 150. And maybe there's even a way to get a 250,000 point welcome offer. So don't just settle on the first thing you see. You need to know that you're getting trusted, reputable information, maximizing for the best available offer on any particular card.
Does your site have a tool of any kind that's like plug in, this is the value of pet, like to kind of help structure these kind of things? Like a calculator to calculate like, okay, so you're getting this many miles with these options. This is essentially the expected value of this point for these offers, things like that.
No, we don't have anything like that right now. And we've talked about that might be a future step we'd take. But it's complicated in a number of ways. One is that most of the calculators that are out there right now, they basically ask you, how much do you spend each year or each week or whatever on groceries and gas and dining and things like that, right? And then it'll tell you, okay, this is the best card, or this is the best couple cards to have in your wallet to earn the most rewards for your daily spend. That's all fine, but to earn hundreds of thousands or even millions of points each year through points and miles, the type of stuff we write about, increasing your daily spend at grocery stores, the value of that spend is good, but it's not going to get you hundreds of thousands more points than you would have otherwise. You're going to be talking about at best tens of thousands more points. So what's really more important is the value of new sign-up bonuses, value of like friend referral offers where you can get a bunch of points by referring someone else. You could often, if you have a friend who's doing this with you, you can often like sort of refer each other back and forth and get both the sign-up bonus and the referral bonus by doing that kind of thing. So that's where the big value is, the big wins. And a calculator like that wouldn't really help for that situation.
to build on that, so two things. First of all, we have what we call reasonable redemption values, where we have, as scientifically as we can, come up with values for various, for instance, hotel points, airline currencies, and transferable points, using the best we can muster in terms of a conservative point valuation. So we list out how we determine that and what that means, and the value of various benefits and how that's determined. And a spreadsheet does the calculations. So our first year values take a lot of that into consideration. But I think that what Greg said there might be something that's new for a lot of people. And that's the idea that Greg said, talked about earning hundreds of thousands or even millions of points per year. And that might sound a little crazy to somebody who's brand new to this game. Whereas to Greg and I, it's 1 million points in a year is a common year, or maybe sometimes even a couple million points in a year. We tend to be, maybe I'd say, pedantic in terms of I want to get every extra point per dollar at the grocery store that I can, just because I love to maximize and eke every little bit of value out that I can. I'm not super concerned all the time. As much as I like to do that, I know that it doesn't make an incremental difference in my end of year points balance, because I'm going to earn 10 or 12 or 15 new card sign up bonuses this year and probably earn 1 million, 2 million points between my wife and I anyway. So if I give up an extra 1,000 points at the grocery store this year, it's not going to make a noticeable difference in terms of what I'm able to do with award travel.
Yeah, I definitely want to get into how to spend to earn the points. But before we get into that, is there anything a beginner can do that would be a major mistake that would hinder any future value?
Mistake number one is that if you're opening credit cards and you're going to be carrying a balance and paying interest, you're going to lose at this game. There is no credit card reward in the world that is worth enough to outpace whatever it's going to cost you if you're going to be carrying balances. So you only want to play this game if you know that you're not going to spend more than you can afford to pay for. Now, there are a lot of ways to increase your spend and get most of your money back. And so there are ways to earn more points and do more spend and get that money back and pay off the bill. So there are ways to earn more points by increasing your spend, but not by paying interest. So mistake number one is just, this is not a tool if you need to take on debt. Then there are much better ways to do that.
Just pay your balance in full each month so that you don't incur late payment fees and interest on your credit card accounts, because you might get $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 worth of value initially from a credit card, but then if month after month you're paying, big interest, obviously over time you're going to come out as a loser in that game.
And it's a universal truth that good rewards credit cards have high interest rates. These are not cards that you want to be spending on and paying. If you need to borrow money, you can do it at a much lower rate than you would with a rewards credit card. So it's not a good game if you're not going to be able to do that. That's mistake number one, I think. And then mistake number two is one that every beginner is going to make. You're going to make a suboptimal redemption at some point. And yeah, it's going to cost you in the sense that maybe you could have saved miles and redeemed miles better, but you're going to learn from that and not do that twice. And, or maybe you'll do it 2 or 3 times before you realize, I could have booked that Delta flight through Virgin Atlantic and saved a lot of miles. But that's part of the game and part of the learning experience. And I think anybody in this game who makes it sound like they've never made those mistakes before probably hasn't actually redeemed very many miles and points, because we've all done that before. So it's not going to be something that's going to ruin you. The only other thing that I would say is not paying attention to those application rules. And really the big one, I think, for a lot of people is the Chase 524 rule, which again, is a beginner probably doesn't even sound like it would be a problem for you. Most people aren't opening 5 credit cards in the space of 2 years. However, most people that are maximizing this hobby certainly are. And so failing to open the set of Chase cards that are going to be the ones that you want to keep and hold, I think could be a long-term mistake. In my own situation, I didn't open the World of Hyatt credit card, for instance, in the beginning. And then I realized over time that, Hyatt Elite status matters to me. And I'd like to be able to earn some Elite Night credits through credit card spend and get some annual free night certificates, et cetera. And so I had to wait a while in order to be able to get that card. I had to kind of sit out on some offers in order to be able to get it later on. Whereas if I had known in the beginning or planned or prioritized the right Chase cards from day one, then I wouldn't have found myself in that situation.
Yeah. Another common beginner mistake or even medium player mistake is to sign up for offers when they're not the best available. So if you believe that the person in the airport telling you to sign up for the Delta card to get 60,000 miles that's probably a mistake because you probably can find a better offer elsewhere. And that's why we spend an incredible amount of time making sure that on our best offers page, we only show the best public offer available for all the cards. In many cases, that means we're leaving revenue on the table because in some cases, we have what are called affiliate links for credit card offers. And so that means if somebody clicks through an affiliate link to sign up for a particular card, if we have an affiliate relationship with that bank, we would get paid a commission if they are approved. Most sites will just display whatever the affiliate offer is, but often the best public offer is not the affiliate offer. And so when that happens, we don't show our affiliate offer at all. We show whatever the best public offer is. And so, an easy way for beginners to avoid signing up for a card at a much lower offer than they could find elsewhere is just look on frequentmiler.com/best offers to find what the offer is there before signing up for anything from a flyer or anywhere else, any other website they see. It's possible that you can get a targeted offer like in the mail or an email for a better offer than what's on our site, but those are usually targeted to you. And so those aren't considered public offers that we can display.
And so I always tell friends and family, if you receive something or you're thinking about applying for something, whether you're applying through our website or not, at least check and see what we have listed as the best offer, because we do have that policy of only listing the best publicly available offers. So if you're looking at an offer for X, just make sure that you couldn't do better than whatever X is wherever you're applying for it by checking against that. And I think that's a really good point that Greg makes, because sometimes it can be a really significant spread between an offer you might see in an airport or get marketed to in some way versus what is possible with just a slightly different link.
You guys are obviously like what we would call pro level. How much time and research are you putting into this to get that, what you said, your max value of points and accumulating points? I mean, you said also multiple cards, it's not uncommon. Also talk about how you go about focusing on the cards if you're handling 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards at a time. This has got to be really time consuming.
When getting new cards, I kind of put them in different categories. There are cards that I get solely because of the welcome bonus. And a year later, when the next annual fee comes due, I'm going to either cancel that card or downgrade it to a fee-free card if available. That's the default. That's what I'm going to assume for most new card applications is going to happen. And there are tools that you can get, there's one called Travel Freely that help with that process that you just tell it, okay, I just signed up for, the Sapphire Preferred card, and it will remind you as it's getting close to 3 months later that you have to have spent the $5,000 in order to earn the welcome bonus. And it'll remind you a year later, hey, you might want to cancel the card now or downgrade it. That's how I handle that category of cards, the ones that are just sign up and then cancel. Another category are cards that have some kind of perks that I like, but I'm not going to keep in my wallet for spend. So Delta cards are actually good examples. I like getting the annual companion voucher that some of the Delta cards offer. You don't have to put any spend on the card to use that companion offer. I like getting Delta Sky Club access with a Delta Reserve card. Same thing, as long as that card is linked to your Delta profile, you don't need to bring the card with you to get into the club. And so there are a lot of cards like that where I don't value them for their spend, but I value them for, their perks. Then there's the cards that I actually want to carry around in my wallet. And so sometimes I'll sign up for a card because this earns 4 points per dollar at grocery stores. So that's great. I'm going to get that and keep that and use that for all my grocery store purchases. And I only have, I think, 3 cards in my wallet that I use regularly at different types of merchants because of what we talked about earlier. So I have cards that are good enough for a few major categories of spend. For everything else, I just have a good, what I call an everywhere else card, a card that gets good value for all spend everywhere. And I don't worry, there's going to be some purchases where I'm earning 2 points instead of 3 points, because in the big picture of things, as I said earlier, that's going to be at most 10,000 points in a year at most, I think. And even if it was tens of thousands, that'll pale in comparison to the hundreds of thousands or even millions that I'm earning from welcome bonuses.
Yeah, so I think Greg really put that in perspective well. To answer the question of how much time are you spending, right? It varies. It depends on what you're looking to get out of it. How much time are we spending on it? More than most people are going to spend on it, because this is what we do and this is what we enjoy doing. And A, it was a hobby to begin with, and then B, it became a way to earn a living on top of that. We were able to do that. So we probably both spend more time than the average person, but the return on investment is potentially huge. And so I think it just varies depending on what you're looking to get. If you're looking for 1 or 2 trips a year, you're primarily traveling domestically, it doesn't necessarily take a lot of time. There are a lot of great award search tools out there. So if you're looking to figure out, which of my points are going to give me the best deal for this flight from New York to Las Vegas, or from, Topeka to wherever, you could use a tool like a Award Tool or Points. Yeah, those are good award search tools. There's others out there too, Seats.arrow, as you get a little bit more advanced, and Point.me, et cetera. So there are a number of different sites that can help you find awards to take a lot of the stuff that is time consuming and condensify it, so to speak, make it a lot simpler to do. But, if you're willing to put in time and effort, then the reward can be huge. I have a family of 4, and last summer we spent 6 weeks traveling. We went to Europe, we went to Mauritius off the coast of Africa, we went to Singapore and Japan, and stopped in Honolulu on the way home, and with my wife and kids. And I got all of that travel and miles and points that I earn in a year typically. And that's not the only trip I took abroad last year, and not the only time I visited some of those places. And that to me is pretty wild, because I wouldn't be spending the money to do all of that. Instead, I can spend some time focusing on learning how to maximize earning more points, because you can earn far more points for most people than you would money in the same amount of time with the same amount of focus and time. The return on investment can be really big. And then it's going to vary from person to person as to how much time they need to use. But there's a lot of great tools out there. Like we said, Greg mentioned Travel Freely, which is a great tool for keeping organized with when you got to meet your minimum spend, when it's time to cancel or keep. And then there's a bunch of good award search tools. And those two things together can reduce the amount of time you have to spend on this hobby dramatically.
I'm going to narrow it even more to a specific search tool that I think almost everybody should install. If you use Google Flights at all to search for cash flight, prices, install the plugin called Points Path. And what that does is, in your search results, it shows you what the point price is for the same flights that you're searching. So, my example at the beginning of the show where I said I booked a flight just yesterday with Virgin Atlantic miles, that's because Points Path showed me. I was looking up the cash rate to fly to DC, and Points Path showed me, I can book that for 7,500 points. Boom.
Yeah, that's a great example. And for last minute travel, awards can come in really handy. I mean, if you have to fly somewhere tomorrow, then, taking a quick look at Google Flights, you'd be sometimes pretty amazed with that Points Path extension as to how few points you could potentially use as compared to the amount of cash it might cost you for that last minute flight.
Travel Freely is totally free. I recommend that one to just manage the process of signing up for cards serially. That'll kind of hold your hand through that process. So if you don't want to spend a lot of time on this, you're just getting your feet wet, start with Travel Freely. The other advantage there is it catalogs all the cards you get. So if you do get more into this, there's going to come a time where you're going to need to know the answer to questions like, when did I sign up for card X, Y, or Z? Because I won't be able to get approved for this other card unless it's been 48 months since I signed up for that one or whatever. There's different rules, but Travel Freely keeps track of all that and will actually tell you whether you're eligible for whatever card you're looking at. So do that for the sign up bonus part of things, and do, I think, Points Path for the award searching, because it'll show you all at once. But because Google Flights shows you the cash rate, you could see right next to it the points price, and it'll actually give you a recommendation. The points price is better or the cash price is better, because sometimes you are better off just paying cash for flights, and it'll let you know that.
Are those credit cards that are cash back cards, are any of those even worth having, or is it always better to just have a card that gives you points versus cash?
If all else was equal, I'd say you should always get a card that offers transferable points instead of cash back, because most of those programs you can convert those points to cash if that's what you want. So, we mentioned Chase Ultimate Rewards before. If you just want to convert those points to cash back, you can. But it gives you the benefit of having other things you could do with it and to get more value. But things are not all equal, because there are some cashback cards that give the opportunity to earn a lot more pennies per dollar spent than you can earn transferable points per dollar spent. So one example is Bank of America has some cards that their base earning rate is only 1.5% cash back, which isn't very good. But if you have a lot invested, if you have $100,000 invested with Bank of America or Merrill, so Merrill Edge or Merrill Lynch, then you get this level of sort of elite status with the bank that gives you a 75% bump in how much your card earns. And so you end up with earning 2.62% cash back everywhere. So that's really good. And so depending on what you would do with points instead, that might be better than the points.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Delta card example, if you're spending on a Delta card at 1 mile per dollar and your alternative is you could be spending on a Bank of America card at 2.62% back, then you can look at it as every mile you earn on the Delta card at 1x is costing you 2.62 cents. And so is it worth buying that? Well, how much are you going to redeem the miles for? And in that specific example, redeeming the Delta miles at more than 2.62 cents per mile is really tough. So then you have to start valuing the other ancillary benefits of the spend, like the elite status that we talked about before. So is it ever worth using a cashback card? It certainly can be. It's a very easy solution for many people. Many people in this game that have a partner that are, perhaps married, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, find that can be a really good solution for player two, for the other partner in a relationship, to keep things simple and easy. They can use that card everywhere. And I say player two, I mean whoever it is that's not interested in the credit card rewards hobby and doesn't want to maximize which card they use where. That can be a good solution. The other thing is that cashback cards can be useful for the intro bonuses sometimes. Every now and then I'll open a cashback card because maybe it'll offer $750 cash back after I spend $7,500. That's 10% back. And I mean, I like $750 as much as anybody. I can do anything with the $750, whereas 75,000 points, I could potentially stretch much farther. Still, there are times when I want $75 or $750 because I can use that on anything I want. I'm not limited to award redemptions necessarily. So yeah, is there a place for cashback cards? There certainly is. Is it a centerpiece of our strategy? Not usually.
Except it is kind of
go ahead.
When you go to the next level of this, a lot of cards advertise as cash back. The rewards can actually be moved to a card that has transferable points, and then those rewards become transferable. Take Capital One, for example. Their Venture and Venture X cards earn what they call miles, which are just transferable points. But you could also sign up for a Capital One Saver card, which is advertised as a cashback card. If all you have is a Saver card, that's all it is a cashback card. But you can move that cash over to your Venture card or to someone else's Venture card to become miles that are transferable. That's one example. Chase is the same thing, that a number of their cards that are in Ultimate Rewards points are advertised as cashback cards because those particular cards don't let you transfer the Ultimate Rewards points to airline and hotel programs, but you can move those points to your Sapphire Preferred or Sapphire Reserve card. Then they become transferable.
So the Sapphire Preferred we talked about before, great welcome offer, but most purchases only earn 1 point per dollar spent. That's not a great return. If you get a Chase Freedom Unlimited card, that card is advertised as a 1.5% cash back card, but it actually earns 1.5 Ultimate Rewards points. And so if you also have a Sapphire Preferred card, then you can take that 1.5 points per dollar spent. Instead of looking at it as 1.5% cash back, you can move those 1.5 points per dollar spent to your Sapphire Preferred and then transfer on to partners. And if you have one Sapphire Preferred in your household, your partner, somebody else living in the household with you, could transfer their points to your Sapphire Preferred card too. And so there's often card combinations there, Greg's right, where cashback might look appealing, not because it's cash necessarily, but because it can be turned into rewards that could potentially be leveraged for even more value. And so that Freedom Unlimited, for instance, that earns 1.5 points per dollar spent. Well, if you use those points through the Chase Travel portal, that card is essentially earning almost 2% back in reality towards travel if you're able to move those to your Sapphire Preferred and then use it to book travel, which gets a little complicated. The other place where cash back comes into play is once you get to the point where you are earning millions of points per year, then there are times when you might choose to earn cash back because you have enough miles or points to cover all of your needs. And so cash then becomes an alternative sometimes.
Yeah. I want to throw in one more thing. One of our favorite cards in this space is advertised as a cashback card. It's Chase's Inc. Business Cash Card. The reason we love it is that it earns 5 points per dollar at office supply stores. Now, you might wonder, why would we care about office supply stores? Well, the reason is that a lot of them sell gift cards. And so you could go to Staples or Office Depot and, pick out an Amazon gift card or whatever. Sometimes they have specials where their Visa gift cards have no fee attached to them. So you could go into a Staples during one of those specials, buy a bunch of Visa gift cards at face value and earn 5 points per dollar in doing that.
And that plays with Visa and MasterCard ones in some cases might be loadable to online casinos, which may have some limits, and you guys might delve into that more than I do, but certainly more than we do when writing about it. But anyway, I think Greg's point is that you could potentially walk in and walk out with a whole lot of points and an equal amount of dollars in gift cards as to what you spent. So that's a pretty good trade.
So the credit card companies, in this particular, same as the casinos, they're aware of people like you. So
Yes.
what do you come up against in terms of what we would call heat or countermeasures, or what are they doing to fend you off?
Different issuers approach things differently. And so some issuers are more vigilant in trying to catch behavior that they don't like. And some have kind of set almost speed limits and barriers and say, okay, you can earn 5x on up to $25,000 in this type of spend per year. And so if you're staying under that bar, you're probably not going to draw any heat. Now, I say probably, there are different behaviors that do tend to draw the heat. Things like suddenly increasing your spend exponentially. You go from you're spending $1,000 or $2,000 a month to all of a sudden you're spending 25 or 50. That's a behavior that oftentimes gives banks the impression that you're a bust out risk. Bust out is like you're going to spend all sorts of money on all your credit cards and then go disappear to a tropical beach somewhere. And that's what they want to avoid people doing. And so you don't want to look like that's what you're doing because you're not, right? So instead, you want to ramp up your spend slowly. Another mistake, this is a good one to have brought up, especially among probably the maximization crowd, would be that maybe somebody listening to this is going to be like, oh, well, I could do this and that and the other thing, and putting the pedal to the metal right away and cycling your credit limits is a common trigger for drawing heat. If that's a concern. And when I say cycling, what I mean is, let's say you get approved for a new card with a $10,000 limit and you spend $10,000 tomorrow and then you pay it off the next day. And then the day after that, you go and spend $10,000 on the card again. When you use your full limit multiple times in a single billing cycle, that's called cycling your credit limit. And some issuers are particularly sensitive to that. That's a common trigger to get an account shut down. And there's risk there because account shutdowns can vary in their severity. There are some banks that will shut down your accounts, and then maybe after a few years, you can get back in, or you can be an authorized user on somebody's card and potentially then get approved later on. There are other banks that a shutdown is likely to be a lifetime situation. You may not ever get approved with them again. Beyond that, there are times, it's funny. I was at a conference years ago and I heard somebody speaking and they said that Citibank shut down their cards for activities they were doing on their cards that the bank didn't like. And they got a call from a parent, their parent, saying, why isn't my Costco card working? And it was because Citi had also shut down all of the accounts of anyone who was an authorized user on his cards. And he had added a parent as an authorized user on one of his cards. And so there are risks like that. And so you want to avoid that by A, not looking like a bust out risk. So not suddenly increasing your spend, but rather gradually increasing your spend. B, not cycling your credit limits like I just described. And then C, some issuers are more sensitive about particular types of purchases. And so if you're buying things that they obviously don't want, they may be likely not to offer a reward. But those things are things that most people are unlikely to encounter until they get pretty deep into the hobby. And by the time you get that deep into the hobby, you're fairly likely to know what is risky in terms of drawing heat.
Yeah. Another simple one that you do need to be aware of is Amex in particular does not like people signing up for a card, getting the welcome bonus, and then canceling the card before the next annual fee comes due. So we always recommend waiting till that next annual fee comes due. And as long as you then cancel within the next 30 days, they won't charge you that annual fee. Or if you've already paid it, they'll send it back. Yeah, that's when you get a sign-up bonus, or sometimes you'll get an upgrade bonus for upgrading from one type of card to another. And same thing, you need to keep that card for a year to stay in their good graces. They're not going to close down your account probably, but they will probably claw back that welcome bonus if you don't play by the rules. Besides
flights, hotels, cashback, what are the other useful ways to redeem your points on that you guys have seen or that you do regularly?
Well, hotels are big. A lot of hotels don't offer great value for their points, but there are plenty of situations where they do. And not going to get into the complexity of that right now, but there are opportunities to stay at unbelievable places, and we do this all the time. We stay at places that are charging people $2,000-$3,000 a night, and we're just using, free night certificates or a reasonable number of points for those stays.
Yeah, but then beyond, if you're asking beyond travel type redemptions, there are sometimes good redemptions. Most of the time, other ways to use your points are not going to be great value. Like almost every transferable currency out there will give you the chance to use your points at Amazon. Don't use your points at checkout at Amazon because you're usually going to get about 0.6 of a cent per point or maybe 0.8 of a cent per point. And most points, you could find a way to cash them out for at least 1 cent each. So just cash them out and use your cash at Amazon rather than redeem your points at Amazon. Now, every now and then there might be an offer where you can redeem 1 point and save 30% or something. There are times when you might use 1 point, but don't redeem your points in general for stuff like that. Now, there are some exceptions. There are some issuers and some programs that offer some good value activity type stuff. Capital One, we've written about a number of times. They have a relationship with Major League Baseball where every couple of months they'll release seats for all of the Major League Baseball games. They have 4 cardholder exclusive seats. Now, I should caveat this by saying they have a way to buy tickets through Capital One Entertainment that is terrible value for your miles. But when they release the baseball seats, there are 4 cardholder exclusive seats for every game that cost 5,000 miles each that are usually like 5 or 10 or 15 rows from the field. Excellent seats for 5,000 points. I've gone to Yankee Stadium and Citi Field and sat in seats that would have cost over $200 a ticket for 5,000 miles a person. So, and now obviously it's going to vary park where you are in the country as far as how much value that yields. And those tickets go very quickly, the cardholder exclusive ones. It's a very niche redemption there. But in an attempt to answer the question, are there other ways to use the points? Sometimes there are. You need to be pretty dialed in order to find those things. But there are some of those opportunities, and I've taken advantage of some of them here and there. Every hotel program and airline program offers experiences. Most of them are at poor value per point, but sometimes you'll find some once-in-a-lifetime kind of things. Years ago, there was a well-known blogger in the blogosphere throughout the first pitch during a World Series game using points, and so sometimes you get things like that, are opportunities you couldn't buy. So if you're earning lots and lots of miles and points, you might be able to have some of those fun experiences that you couldn't buy. And I'm sure that appeals somewhat to, the Casino Advantage player crowd, because sometimes you get those comps that money couldn't buy, right? So a similar type of a situation.
Can you just share a crazy or creative trick you've used to earn a ton of points? And again, you're talking to novices or people that don't know.
Well, very simple one, actually, that I'm surprised Greg didn't jump on. It isn't as crazy necessarily, but probably is to a novice, that you can pay your taxes with a credit card. There's a fee to pay your taxes with a credit card, but the fee it varies by processor. I think there are 2 official processors right now, but about 1.89% or something like that in order to pay your taxes. So at a very base level, if you're using a 2% cash back card, you're coming out 1/10 of a percentage point ahead. Not very much, right? But if you're opening a new card that offers a great welcome bonus, then you could potentially pay your taxes with a credit card. And for a relatively low cost, you could potentially be earning a lot of points. There are some cards out there that offer 150,000, sometimes as much as 250,000 points. And some of those really big offers do sometimes require $10,000 or $15,000 worth of spend. But you could easily knock that out with a tax payment if you owe that much in taxes. And if you're an advantaged casino player, I bet that probably you don't have withholdings that cover all of it all the time. So you might owe some taxes and or quarterly taxes. Also, of course, you can pay that way. And then, of course, if you overpay your taxes, I mean, just like if you withhold too much from your check during the year, you get a refund. And so it's possible to pay more than what you think you're going to owe just to be safe and make sure that you've covered your obligation. And it'll cost you 1.87%. So it depends on how much you're earning in rewards on a particular card. But there are some cards that, Greg mentioned earlier, it's possible to earn 2.62% cash back. And so now you're talking about 0.8 of a percentage point. And again, depending on the amount of volume you have the capacity to do at that rate, it can be advantageous even for cash, although the cash win there is relatively small compared to the potential for earning a couple of welcome bonuses by making large tax payments. So that's one.
So just recently, SAS, Scandinavian Airlines, did a crazy promotion where they said if you fly 15 of their partners, including themselves, within about a 2-month period, you can earn 1 million miles with them. So Nick, me, and Steven, another writer on our team, we all did that. And we actually made it a competition amongst ourselves. We called it Million Mile Madness. And we basically flew around the world in a very short period of time, hit all 15 airlines out of, I guess there were 17 possible, something like that. And so, there were ones in China where some of us didn't have visas. So we had to do like these 72-hour visa on arrival type of thing. It was a fun, exciting, and exhausting trip, but that was a very different way to earn 1 million miles.
It was, because normally we write about ways to earn them without flying, right? In that case, it was totally flying. So you did what? 15 airlines, which were all based in different countries, I think, right? So maybe there were 2 in China, right? 3 in China. But so at least a dozen different countries you visited, and it took you what, like 7.5, 8 days, right, Craig?
Altogether, it took me 9 days.
9 days. Okay. And we each spent a few $1,000s, but we each earned 1 million miles doing it. So, whether or not that was worth the time.
Are those transferable?
Those are not. So those were miles that were specific to SAS, which is a program, a European airline, that program that's not going to be relevant for most people. But to put a kind of a, for instance, on there, if you can find their Saver Business Class awards to and from Europe, it's 50,000 points each way. So every 100,000 is a round trip. So it's like essentially, you could have earned as many as 10 round trips in business class to Europe on that, which is a pretty phenomenal return.
When do they expire?
4 years. So you got 4 years out, and we'll find a way to use 1 million miles each within the space of 4 years, I'm sure.
I don't know if there's any way you can know this, but do you know if anybody else did it other than you three?
Oh yeah, hundreds of people did it. In fact,
okay.
we ran into so many people during our flights that were doing the same thing that it was a lot of fun. There was one sort of bottleneck flight. So Kenya Airways was one of the airlines that we wanted to hit, and Kenya's like way out of the way from everything else that we were flying, but they have a flight that's entirely within Asia. It goes from Bangkok to China. And so everybody wanted to get on that short flight rather than flying all the way to Africa. So the other thing is, during this time, it was only flying 3 times a week, that particular flight. And so in the Bangkok airport, Nick and I, we didn't share our itineraries with each other at all, but we ran into each other there, waiting for that flight, along with about 12 other people that were all doing the same
I think
thing.
it was probably 20 other people. Yeah, that were there. Yeah, that were all doing the same thing. Yeah, I think the airline expected it would be like 3 or 5 or 10 people.
Yeah,
but I think the last I heard, at least 900 people had completed it. So
wow.
It was way more than what they initially expected. But I think it was a particularly good deal for Europeans because they have many fewer ways to earn miles than we do in the US. In the US, we've got all these credit cards that offer big welcome bonuses. So while 1 million miles is a lot and you can get a ton of value out of it, it's possible to do that in a year in the United States, and it's not so easily possible to do that in much of the world. So we have a lot of opportunity when it comes to the credit card game here to earn a lot of miles. So then why did we do it? Well, because we're kind of crazy like that, and we like to take on challenges of that sort. I mean, I think once Greg earned 1 million miles in a single month, right?
Yeah. That was not from flying. That was from doing signups, doing gift card tricks and other stuff. But yeah, it was one of those times where I felt like earning points like the normal way is too easy. So I'm going to challenge myself to do 1 million miles in a month, and I got that done. I actually think it would be in some ways easier these days because sign-up bonuses are a lot bigger than I did that back in 2013, I think it was, when at that time a good sign-up bonus was like 50,000 points. Because, in fact, I remember now, I earned about half of those million points from 11 credit cards I signed up for. So that's less than 50,000 average. These days, 50,000 is considered a pretty poor sign-up bonus.
Is your website membership or is it free for everyone?
Free for everyone. If people have like questions about the types of things we were talking about, a great thing to do is join our Facebook group, which is called Frequent Miler Insiders, and ask your questions there.
Well, thank you so much, Nick and Greg from thefrequentmiler.com. This has been really, really enlightening. And also, you guys are cut from the same cloth as us card counters. There's
the parallels.
I see zero difference.
There's so many parallels from what you guys had said.
Yeah, there really are.
I have no doubt.
You guys are going after the banks just like we go after casinos. So thank you for sharing all this information. And everyone listening, definitely check out their website, frequentmiler.com. It's totally free for you to check out. It's not a membership or a paid website. They have so much good info on there if you want to get into this. Also, the Frequent Miler on the Air podcast. And there's also a really good Facebook page, Frequent Miler Insiders. So check all that out. And if you guys want to learn about card counting, go to blackjackapprenticeship.com or visit the Blackjack Apprenticeship YouTube channel.